Money was never designed to make you feel safe, and yet almost everything in modern life revolves around it. People chase it, fear losing it, measure themselves by it. But what if the problem isn't that we don't have enough money? What if the real problem is that we expect money to do something it was never meant to do? This is the truth about money, the part nobody talks about. At some point, almost everyone believes the same story. If I just earned a little more money, life would finally feel easier. Less stress, more freedom, more control over everyday decisions. And when it happens for the first time, it feels real. The first raise, the first month where money isn't an immediate worry, the first time you stop checking your bank account every day. For a short while, there's relief, a sense that things are finally moving in the right direction. But slowly, often without noticing, that feeling begins to fade. Bills return, new expenses appear, expectations quietly rise, not because you failed, not because you're irresponsible, but because money was never designed to create long-term peace of mind, and almost no one explains that part. Money is often described as freedom, but in reality, money is none of the things we project onto it. It's not happiness, it's not security, and it's not meaning. Money is a tool, a system created to exchange value efficiently, to measure effort, to simplify cooperation between people, that's all. The problem starts when money becomes more than that, when it turns into a scoreboard for success, a measure of personal worth, a symbol of whether someone is doing well in life. Once that happens, money stops being neutral, and every number suddenly feels personal. Most people exchange time for money. Hours become wages, days become salaries, years become careers. The system rewards productivity, efficiency, and output, not calmness, not balance, not long-term peace. At the same time, money constantly loses value. Inflation slowly erodes purchasing power. Prices rise faster than wages. Stability feels harder to reach every year. So even when people do everything they were told to do, study, work hard, stay disciplined, it can feel like progress is slipping away. Not because they're lazy, but because the rules quietly changed. There's another effect few people warn you about. When income increases, so do expectations. What once felt like luxury gradually becomes normal. A better apartment, a nicer car, more subscriptions, more commitments. Each upgrade feels justified. Each one feels small on its own. But together, they reset what enough means. This is lifestyle inflation, and it traps people not in poverty, but in a constant state of pressure, earning more, yet never feeling ahead. Most people never consciously decide to raise their lifestyle. It happens quietly. A slightly better phone, a nicer place to live, more subscriptions, more comfort. Each decision feels small, reasonable, earned, but together, they permanently increase the baseline. What once felt like progress becomes the new normal. And from that moment on, standing still feels like falling behind. Money becomes even more powerful when comparison enters the picture. We don't compare our lives to the past. We compare them sideways, to coworkers, to friends, to people we barely know online. Social media quietly rewires expectations. Suddenly, normal feels insufficient. Enough feels average, and average feels like failure. Not because it is, but because perception has changed. Psychologically, money is closely tied to identity. It signals competence, control, status. So when income increases, so does attachment. Money stops being a tool and becomes part of who we think we are. And anything tied to identity creates fear. Fear of loss. Fear of falling behind. Fear of no longer being enough. One of the biggest illusions about money is the idea of control. We believe that more money means more certainty, more predictability, more safety. But money doesn't remove uncertainty, it only postpones it. Markets change, jobs disappear, expenses rise, and the moment control feels threatened, fear returns. Not because money failed, but because it was never meant to provide certainty in the first place. At its core, money is closely tied to time. We exchange hours of our lives for numbers on a screen. The assumption is simple. More money equals more freedom later. But time only moves in one direction, and many people don't realize too late that they optimized income at the cost of presence. Money can be saved. Time cannot. And no amount of money can buy back years spent chasing the wrong thing. The reason this system works so well is because it keeps people busy. Busy earning, busy spending, busy upgrading. There's always another level, another milestone, another benchmark. And as long as attention stays focused on the next number, deeper questions get postponed. Questions about meaning, direction, and enough. What if success wasn't defined by income alone? What if it was measured by how little fear money creates in your life? By how much flexibility you have? By how much time you control? In that sense, real wealth isn't about accumulation. It's about alignment. And that changes everything. Money doesn't just influence what we buy, it influences how we decide. When money feels tight, decisions become short-term, safe, defensive. When money feels abundant, decisions often become reactive. Bigger risks, higher expectations, more pressure to maintain a certain image. In both cases, money quietly sits in the background, shaping choices without being questioned. Not because people are careless, but because money has become the filter through which decisions are made. The moment every choice is measured financially, clarity slowly disappears. And what looks like freedom often turns into another form of constraint. If this perspective makes sense to you, this channel explores many more topics beneath the surface. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Money doesn't remove fear. It often just changes its shape. When you don't have much, you fear running out. When you have more, you fear losing what you've built. Responsibilities grow, expectations increase. People depend on you. The freedom you imagined comes with invisible obligations. And this part rarely gets talked about, because it doesn't fit the success narrative. This is why chasing more money without clarity rarely leads to satisfaction. Money can solve practical problems. It can reduce immediate stress. It can buy comfort and options. But it cannot answer deeper questions. Why am I doing this? What am I sacrificing for this lifestyle? And when would it actually be enough? Without clear answers, more money doesn't create freedom. It simply raises the stakes. The mistake isn't wanting money. Money matters. It affects comfort, stability, and opportunity. The mistake is expecting it to provide meaning. Meaning doesn't come from numbers. It comes from alignment, from understanding what money should support, not replace. When money becomes the goal, there is no finish line. When money becomes the tool, it finally makes sense. Money is powerful, but only when it's in the right place. Not as your identity, not as your purpose, just as a tool. This shift changes how money feels in everyday life. Spending becomes more intentional. Earning becomes less frantic. Decisions feel calmer. Money stops being something you chase and starts becoming something you manage, not with fear, not with obsession, but with clarity. And clarity creates space for better choices, for healthier trade-offs, and for a life that isn't constantly measured against the next financial milestone. That's when money finally works the way it always should have. If this changed how you think about money, there's much more beneath the surface. This is Hidden Depths,